Welcome back to the 3x5 Live
podcast.
On this podcast, we talk about mindset, mindfulness, productivity, everything self-development. On our last episode, we talked about embracing the hate. Actually got a lot of messages, DMs about that and how it came to some people at a very important time. So I enjoyed that one.
I did too.
This week, we're going to talk a little bit about the power of thought. This has been pretty much a common theme whenever we talk about some of the endurance events that I have done and internal mantras, internal dialogue, and how that impacts your life. Today, we're going to kind of talk about it from the frame from Joe Dispenza. He is a very popular author, thought leader, a lot about unlocking the power of your mind.
I think that's actually the title of his book, right?
Yeah, and how we think has a huge impact on our health and happiness. And the way he phrases some of like a new lens of how to look at your thoughts, we found just very, very powerful.
I mean, he definitely has a science brain. He does a ton of clinical trials and research and data collection. And I mean, he's an extremely intelligent human being, but the way that he laid out just how powerful an impact our thoughts have and how it really can shape your entire life and your existence, your personality. I was listening to some of his work the other day, and I just thought that it would be worthwhile to kind of unpack it a little bit with you. So one of the things that he talked about is the research behind that 90% of your thoughts are the same as the day before. So basically, our thought patterns and the stories we tell ourselves are the same exact stories that we've been continuing to tell ourselves over, weeks and months and years. And so the same thoughts will lead to the same choices. The same choices are going to lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors lead to the same experiences. The same experiences produce the exact same emotion. The emotion influences our biology, gene expression, hormones. And if we don't do anything different, it's going to stay the same. So this was something that he said in his work. And it just stood out to me so much because it just shows you that cyclic nature. And we've talked about the maze before and how we get stuck in our behaviors and how this really just goes back to the thoughts that we have in our head, the stories that are on repeat. And so I thought that this was an interesting way to look at that. How are we hardwiring our brain to almost become like a subconscious program? Like we're not even conscious of our thoughts. It's almost like our brain is taking over based on this repetitive nature of how we're presenting our thinking.
Yeah, and another stat he throws out there is 95% of who we are by the age of 35 are a set of memorized behaviors. So if you're, let's just say you're in your late 20s right now, you might want to take pause and be like, what learned behaviors am I ingraining in myself that now are going to be there for the rest of my life unless I address them? And if you're, over that age of 35 or in that window, and you're trying to make habit changes, you're trying to change your life, and you always have these roadblocks come up, maybe take the step back and look at it from the lens of, wow, how am I hardwired? What are those 90% of those thoughts that I think repetitively every single day? What are they and how are they impacting some of these habits that I'm trying to change in my life?
And habit change is hard. We've talked about habit change ad nauseum, I think, on this podcast. It is not easy. The reason why it keeps coming up is because it's something that needs constant refocus and reminders.
Yep.
And something that he talked about was like the moment you decide to make a different choice, you have to be ready because you're going to feel uncomfortable. There is no way to change these ingrained. Think about like a hardwired system in your body, and you have to change not only the function of your body, but your mind. And he did talk about the relationship between like our bodies love the familiar. So specifically to like sitting down quietly and doing meditation or starting a new movement routine with exercise, that is going to be especially hard because the body wants to say, oh, we can do it tomorrow. Oh, I feel a little kink in my knee. I don't know if I should be doing this. Oh, I'm feeling tired. And the body actually gives information to the brain and supports the stories that we continue to tell ourselves. So you have these things that are fighting against you when you're trying to create habits. And it just was such a great reminder of it's not supposed to be easy. But how do we rewire our brain so that we can embrace new habits? It's by repetitive nature. It's by changing the stories we're telling ourselves and doing it consistently.
Yeah. And something that would be neat to do is if let's just say you are about to go meditate, or you are trying to have a morning routine of walking. And suddenly, as you're about to do that activity, your brain starts talking to you and giving you reasons not to do it. Almost like journal that down, write it out. So then it's in front of you and be like, oh, wow, this is what my subconscious just told me. And it really shines a light on how you're trying to sabotage this effort within yourself.
That's so funny you say that, because that was the other point that I wanted to bring up that he talked about. I loved this like quote that he said where he was like, your personality creates your personal reality. And basically what our personality is, what we think, how we act, and how we feel. And so we always, I don't know if you've heard this, but we say like kind of we enter the world with our own set of personality. And like you can see that in children. You do have a default personality trait. But research shows that this is not something that can't be changed. It is something that you can adapt. As human beings, we're supposed to adapt and change. Is it hard to do so? Yes. But if there's something you don't like about your personality that's not serving you and how you want to show up in the world, the good news is you can change. And he talked about that first step, like Bryan was just saying, is to become conscious of your unconscious behavior.
Yes.
Do you complain? Do you blame? Do you judge? Is there shame? Do you feel guilt? Like, what are some of your go-to emotions and behaviors that are on rinse and repeat? And when you can become conscious of those, only then can you start to do the work where you change that. And so that awareness of personality and recognizing that it's not fixed is something that I think is liberating for people.
Yes.
Like it gives you permission to make hard choices and make changes and recognize that the person who you want to be is possible, but it's going to take some work.
And at the same time, give yourself some grace that like, okay, now that I'm in my late 30s, 40s, this is hardwired in my brain. And do I want to be 70 and 80 and thinking those same thoughts? And, do that like forward thinking activity of like, if I'm still rinse and repeating these same thoughts 90%, 30 years from now, where's my life going to be? So let's take a hard stance, draw a line in the sand, and change those thoughts now so that it's not still rinse and repeat 30 years from now.
But all of this takes intentionality and takes the ability to really do some self-awareness and self-assessment. It's not just going to happen naturally. So one of the things he talks about is trying to think about what are those personality characteristics that you would like to embody. And I like to think of it in terms of like something that you're trying to achieve. So let's say it's, how can I connect better with my students if I'm a teacher, right? So if you think about a teacher who is able to connect with kids, what personality traits do they have? They're patient, they're compassionate, they're understanding, they're empathetic. So those types of personality traits are what you want to focus on. If I'm a person who is empathetic, what does that look like, sound like, feel like, and do the work? Because that also almost becomes, he talked about it as like a software program. It's not hardware.
Yeah.
It's a software program at that point, because you're trying to embody a different personality. But the more you think about how that feels to be that type of personality, it's almost like your brain thinks, you're hardwiring your brain to think that it's already experienced that experience. You don't even have to physically be empathetic, just thinking about what it would feel like to be empathetic, which I thought was super interesting too. Like you don't even have to physically do the thing. You just have to train your brain to think in that lens of being compassionate, empathetic. So
yeah, that reminds me of, someone that's trying to eat healthier, and they're sitting down to a meal and they're looking at a restaurant or looking at the menu. And it's just like, what would a healthy person pick? So you're starting to rewire and ask your subconscious questions to change, some of those ingrained behaviors.
He calls it mental rehearsal, which I really like that. Like mentally rehearsing. I mean, even before you go into like a meeting or something, do a mental rehearsal of the personality and the person that you want to be when you enter that meeting. That mental rehearsal will set you up for greater success because your brain already thinks that now you are that person.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. His whole shtick is like the power of the mind. And the more and more you look at the power of thoughts and the stories we tell yourself, it just always blows me away that it's like something that we can control. It's hard work, but I don't know. I think it's worth focusing our attention on.
Yeah. That reminds me of Brendan Burchard. Like he has this saying, bring the joy. And he is triggered by doorways. He has ingrained it in his head that when he walks through a doorway, his mind thinks, bring the joy. So when he's going into that meeting with those people, he's going into his parents' house, whatever that is, there's a doorway there. coming home from work, there's a door wet.
I like that.
And so that he's trained his subconscious to see the door wet and then immediately think, bring the joy. So that kind of reinforces
mental rehearsal. Absolutely.
what you just said there. So
awesome.
All right, that's what we got this week. I hope you guys gleaned some insight.
I would definitely check out his work to see if
he has a ton of books out there, Joe Dispenza.
I think he has a podcast too.
So
all right,
that's what we got.
for you.
Take care.
We are all